They left his ranch about 8:30 in the morning on February 18th and kind of took their time. When they left, it was John Tunstall, Fred Tecumseh Waite, William Bonney, John Middleton, Dick Brewer, and Robert Whitman. At the time, besides being John Tunstall's best friend, was also a U.S. Marshal at the time. They all left. Fred Waite broke off from the group within about 5 miles because he was driving a wagon. And this route, they wanted to get back to Lincoln as quickly as possible, but they weren't in a rush. They had no reason to believe that there was a posse after them because they were doing nothing illegal or wrong. Like I said, the horses that they were moving from there to Lincoln, those had already been cleared by William Brady from not being part of the attachment. In fact, they had already been driven a few days earlier from Lincoln to the ranch after they had been decided that it wasn't part of the things that were going to be attached. So they were not in any way, shape, or form worried about being tracked down by a posse. So about right here, so you see there's a ridge here, and then it goes down into what's now called Tunstall Canyon. At that point it was not, obviously. So if you read the reports, Dick Brewer and Robert Whitman and John Tunstall were already down inside of the canyon. And they were down near, and we'll see down when we get down there, there's a dry riverbed or dry creek bed. And it's most likely they were somewhere right in there, which is also happens to be where the marker is, because Robert Whitman and Dick Brewer broke off from him to go chase turkeys, of all things. John Tunstall, for whatever, didn't go with them. He's probably mainly because he wasn't carrying a rifle. He never did. The only guns he ever carried was a British Bulldog pocket pistol. And at this point, he had bought a 5.5-inch silver-plated Colt single-action Army revolver that he carried. But at that, he didn't usually carry anything else. So Dick Brewer and Robert Whitman split off from him to go hunt these turkeys. The horses they were riding obviously were with them. There were a few other horses they were pushing up the canyon. But John Middleton and William Bonney, Billy the Kid, were riding a dragon. John Middleton is described by John Tunstall as being the toughest man that he had ever seen. He said he was, in his own words, he was probably capable of doing anything a ruffian would do. So of all the people in their group, John Middleton was the one that John Tunstall felt was the most rough, I guess, if you want to say that. So Middleton and Bonney were up on this ridge. Tunstall was down in the canyon with Dick Brewer and Middleton who had left to get turkeys. Bonney and Middleton look behind them, and there's a posse of about 20 people coming after them. That was how big the sub-posse was. The actual posse that ended up at the ranch had almost 40 people in it. 20 of them broke off to come after Tunstall with the horses. Again, it's important to remember, they had no warrant for his arrest. The horses were not part of the attachment. Jimmy Dolan had shown up at the ranch when kind of towards the end, when they were probably going to leave, and said, no, you guys need to go after Tunstall. And it was on his orders directly that the sub-posse was formed, including Frank Baker, Jesse Evans, and Tom Hill, these known outlaws. So William Bonney and John Middleton are on this ridge. They see and hear the posse coming. One from the posse and one from Tunstall's men. What Tunstall's men said, William Bonney and John Middleton, was the minute that the posse got over the ridge, they began firing at them, just indiscriminately. Didn't even say surrender, didn't say who they were, just started firing at them. So Bonney and Middleton took off down the canyon and passed John Tunstall. And John Middleton says he was the one who talked to him. As he was riding past him, he said, "John, run, John, run." And apparently Tunstall's last word to John Middleton was, "What, John? What, John?" And they kept going. So Dick Brewer heard the gunshots, and Robert Whitman, and they peeled off and ended up on a ridge, probably somewhere right on the other side of the draw. There's some outcroppings of rocks over there. So Middleton and Bonney kind of circled around and ended up back with Whitman and Brewer. And about that time, they heard 2 or 3 distinct shots from down in the canyon. They essentially knew that Tunstall had been killed. They didn't have to see the bodies to know that. The posse kind of looked around for the rest of the men and the horses, but they figured out that they were kind of in an entrenched situation, so they peeled off and headed out as well. Middleton, Brewer, Bonney, and Whitman then got on their horses without even going to check on John Tunstall, and went back to Lincoln to bring the news. So when they got back to Lincoln the next day, They came back out here with a local rancher named Newcomb. They also brought in a local Hispanic tracker, and they found the body, and that's when they found it kind of staged like it was. So Tunstall had been shot once in the upper chest, and it was a mortal wound. It had severed an artery. He had most likely fallen off his horse face first, and then shot in the back of the head from point blank range. Again, most likely with his own. When his body was found, he was laid on his back. Underneath, very neatly folded, was his overcoat. His pistol had 2 rounds missing in it, and it was in its holster. So the gun that he was carrying that day, and most likely the gun that was used to shoot and kill him, actually was sent back to his family. Is still in their possession. It actually was on display at the Royal Armory in Leeds for a long time, and now it's back in the family's possession. His horse was shot as well, so probably, most likely, 1 bullet had been used on him and 1 bullet had been used on the horse. And his hat was placed under the horse's head in kind of a mocking way as well. And that was the way that they found the body. They retrieved it, put it on a wagon, and took it back to Lincoln where the autopsy was done. A lot of people ask, well, how do we know exactly where this was? The story goes, in the 1920s, Colonel Maurice G. Fulton, who is a Lincoln County War historian and one of the earliest real researchers on the subject, he met and found that tracker. He was still alive, and he brought him back to the site of where it was. But if you read the documents, and like the ones that I gave you, and there's many affidavits. So John Middleton was deposed, and William Bonney was deposed. Robert Widdenman was deposed, and they all told the exact same story, essentially. If you read about the topography, this pretty much fits the bill exactly, especially when you get down there and you see that draw, because anyone who's ever hunted turkeys know, turkeys need water. So you're not going to find turkeys in an area without water, so there's this old dry creek right down there. The other side of the story says that the posse came over the ridge, they came down into the canyon, weren't firing at anybody. 3 of the men broke off, Tom Hill, Frank Baker, and Jesse Evans, along, and he goes back and forth, although he was dead within a month anyway. Buck Morton potentially was with them as well. They come along Tunstall, and what they say happened is Tunstall turned in his saddle. They said, hey, come here, we're not going to hurt you, we don't have any reason to, we're after the horses. And as he turned in his saddle, he began firing at them. That's what they said happened. They shot back and they killed him. That was their story. Unfortunately for everybody, the only people that were in the canyon with Tunstall at that moment were Tom Hill, Frank Baker, Buck Morton, and Jesse Evans. That was it. So all of Tunstall's men were out of line of sight. And within a very short amount of time, Tom Hill was killed while trying to rob a sheep herder down at Shedd's Ranch very soon after. Buck Morton and Frank Baker were killed by the regulators up in the Capitan foothills, basically out of vengeance for this, within a month of this. And Jesse Evans was shot and wounded at the same place where Tom Hill was killed, incarcerated at Fort Stanton, and never ever was deposed or told his story. Of course, never admitted that